Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I'm so glad that you are joining me today. I love playing racquetball. I learned how to play it when I was in college. I took several racquetball classes and I just found that I had a huge love for playing it. I love the physics of it, where the room is all encased and you're trying to figure out where the ball is going. And I love being able to figure that out and then just to slam it as hard as you can to see what you can do with it. Well, this one day I was playing racquetball with my youngest daughter, Georgia, and she and I were in the middle of this really great volley, and I whacked that ball really hard, and instead of bouncing, it totally just fell flat. Like it didn't go anywhere, and it's not at all what we were expecting. And so, of course, we busted up laughing. Well, we went over there to see what was wrong with the ball, and sure enough, that ball had cracked. And so there was no more bounce in it. It could not bounce anymore because it had split open. So obviously, my hit was really, really strong. Of course, it could have just been a really bad ball too, so which is probably what it was. But have you ever also played basketball with a soft ball? Like it is so annoying. And it's sometimes when you're playing, you don't realize that it's soft, that it doesn't have a whole lot of bounce in it until you pump it up. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how I was expending so much effort to make this ball bounce when all it needed was to be pumped up a little bit. Well, here's the thing. You can't play a ball game where you've got an inflatable ball, like football or basketball or racquetball or whatever the case may be. If that ball doesn't have 100% integrity, if it's flat in any way, if it doesn't have, if it has any holes in it, because eventually that ball is going to lose its bounce, is going to lose its ability to do what it needs to do in order for you to play that game. Well, I think that we're a lot like these balls. And I think I'm going to call it a resiliency ball. Okay, because I think this ability to bounce back when we're faced with something difficult, whether it's just something simple or something a little bit more traumatic. But our ability to bounce back is really determines our ability then to play the game of life. And so I want to talk today a little bit about how do you get that bounce in your life? How do you maintain it? What happens when you lose some of that bounce? How can you get some of it back? And then when we fall flat, because everybody will at some point in their life, what is it that we can do to pump ourselves back up and to do the repairs necessary in order for us to keep our bounce? Okay, so there's a lot of different types of resilience, and they are, and I'm only going to mention some of them today. You name it, there's all sorts of different kinds, right? So there's physical resilience, like our body, our ability to repair after we've either had an injury or even just after we've exercised. We've got emotional resiliency, we've got mental resiliency, social resilience, spiritual resilience, and even financial resilience. So those are just some types, but just know that there is a lot more different types of being resilient. And remember that the ultimate goal is to bounce back, right? Is to maintain a level of resiliency so that rather than having post-traumatic stress, we get post-traumatic growth. That is the goal, is to be able to keep growing, because when you are flat, you just cannot play that game of life. You have to fall back. You have to do some repairing. And for some people, that repair takes a long time to do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So how do we pump ourselves up so that we can be more resilient? So I think the first thing is just preventative. There's a lot of different things that we can do to help ourselves maintain that bounce in our lives. Keep our resilience ball pumped up and in good condition. So here's a few suggestions. We've got to decide on what we want and we've got to stick to it, right? And I'm not saying that we have to be super rigid in that. And in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But if you don't have a goal, if you're not working towards something, if you don't haven't found your purpose yet, it is really hard to feel motivated to do anything. And believe me, I have been through this. I have coasted through life at times and have such a dissatisfaction. And when I'm feeling that, then I just don't feel like doing anything. So it's really important to have a goal, have a purpose, have something that you're working towards and keep going in that. It's going to take some determination. It's going to take some grit. I mean, your goal could even be, I want to be more resilient, right? And so you've got to put those measures in place, have some different goals of what you think that will look like for you so that you have something to work towards. And then you do those things even if you don't want to do it. There's parts of our brain that will only develop when we are doing stuff that we don't want to do. Like that's the only way parts of our brain develop. And so in order to have that full capacity, to have that full development, we've got to do those things on a consistent basis that we just don't want to do, but they need to be done. It's a lot like, and having that goal and that process in mind. I mean, it could be anything to do with any of those different types of being resilient. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on the physical side of it, but in my wording, but just know that I really am encompassing everything, right? All different types of being resilient. Okay, so number 2 is to build strength, right? So just like when you build physical strength, you have to push against something or pull or use your muscles in a different way so that you are developing that muscle there. Well, the same is true for emotional strength, for physical, for mental strength, even for financial strength. When we have that push and pull, it forces us to figure out solutions. And it forces us to figure out, okay, in the case of A happening, well, my plan B could be this, or C, D, or E, or whatever. And it's a lot of it is doing what's hard now so that you're ready for the hard that's later. And that in that way, that hard that seems later could be catastrophic, but because you're doing that hard now, you're building that muscle now, that whatever that hard is later actually isn't as hard. Like it's just choosing your hard, right? And that strength just means you've got the habits and you've got the patterns in place that turn skills that, sorry, I said that wrong, that turned, those habits and patterns, they help you to get the skills that you need through that repetition. So there it is. So it took me a second to get there, but I did it. Okay. So number 3, while it is important to be strong, if you don't have some flexibility in there, you become very brittle. And this is true, in like a chemistry type setting, but it's also true within ourselves. If you're only doing strength training, but you're not doing flexibility, you can injure yourself so much easier. So, the same thing is true with ideas, with goals, with whatever the case may be. The flexibility allows the integrity of the object to stay intact, right? You're more pliable. You allow for different perspectives, different relationships, different ideas. When we get too set in our ways, we actually risk stopping our progression. We either become stunted or out of balance in some way. So flexibility is actually really, really important. Just as important as strength is. Those two have to work in tandem. So in order to allow you to have the resiliency that you want and that you need to have. All right, number 4 is endurance. So when you think about it, let's say you're riding a bike, right? And you've got a little hole inside of your tire. Well, you can only ride on that bike for so long before that air is going to be forced out of that hole. And you're going to be spending more and more and more energy to do the same work just because that tire is flat. So, endurance training requires intentionally putting yourself in situations to test your resilience and your recovery time, right? You want to be able to have that tire pumped up the whole way. You want to test it all the time. Because if you're not testing it, then you're not building that endurance to go the distance. Okay. So, number 5 then is to get knowledge and understanding. And I think this is really important. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of growth and of continuing to learn. But let's say you go through school and then you say, I'm done. That's it. I don't want to learn anything else. Well, you've essentially stopped your progress. You have stopped your ability to be flexible and to grow because you are not giving yourself that the knowledge and the experience necessary to grow in a way that will make you resilient later on. So you can learn new things by finding different sources, by trying different methods or different routines. And it's interesting because I know for me, a lot of times I've like done something one certain way or I get kind of set in my way. It's kind of like what I was talking about with flexibility. I get set in my routines and set in what I do that I actually miss out on the opportunity to learn a new method or learn a new routine that actually works better for me. And so when we get that knowledge and when we get that understanding and we're testing it out all the time, we learn more about ourselves. We learn more about our capabilities. We learn more about what we like and what we don't like and what works and what doesn't. And so as we gain knowledge and as we gain understanding and experience, that helps us to become more resilient in the long run. And really, that resiliency from that testing and all that, that comes from trusting ourselves. When you trust yourself, you are able to rely on yourself. And when you know that you can rely on yourself, it doesn't matter at all what anybody else says or thinks about you. And that breeds resistance over and over and over again. Okay, the last one I'm going to say in resiliency is, and how to maintain resiliency is taking care of your mind and your body. So just like you've got to take care of the basketball and you've got to take care of, all those different equipment, you have to take care of your mind and your body. Get enough sleep. I have had times where I just didn't sleep very well. Fortunately, right now I'm in a really good sleeping pattern. So I'm super grateful for that. But I have had times in my life where, I was getting like 3 nights or 3 hours of sleep a night on a consistent basis and not really much more than that. And I got to a point where I couldn't even understand why I was grumpy, why I was struggling. Like I got super depressed and I was trying to figure out what's wrong. I was trying to do all of the things. And I realized, hey, there's nothing wrong with me except I'm just tired. So I really focused on getting that sleep and getting the rest that I needed. And I was absolutely amazed at how I bounced back so quickly just because I was giving my body the rest that it needed. All right. So also included in taking care of your mind and your body is eating healthy, getting exercise regularly, focusing on the positive. And one way that we can do that is just to review on a nightly basis, what are the things that went well? So many times we focus so much on the negative things that happen. Oh, somebody said this to me or that person cut me off. And, we don't, it is not always a natural thing to go, okay, I really loved what this person said to me today. Or I'm so grateful that, we had, my favorite meal for dinner, just to count all of your blessings, right? Review what went well that day. That really helps to put your mind in a really good, resilient place. Okay, this next one is a really big one. At least for me, it is when it comes to taking care of your mind and your body. limit your time on technology. And I don't just mean social media, I mean like all of technology. I mean, even I love reading and I love reading on my e-reader. But you know what? When I read too much on my e-reader, like it physically affects my eyes. And I know that okay, I this has gone too far and it's a negatively affecting my body. And so be very, very careful and very intentional on the time that you use with technology. Here's the thing. Everything in this whole list um, of preventative measures is predicated first on how you care for your mind and your body. If your mind and your body are not in a good place, it really negates a lot of the effort that you put into the other areas. It seriously hampers your ability to progress and even to see where you need to be a little bit more responsive or a little bit more, you know, focusing on what needs to be done in order for you to maintain that resiliency. So taking care of your mind and your body is of utmost importance. And I just can't stress that enough. Like in my own life, I know that it's when I haven't exercised or when I don't get to sleep or when I don't eat well, like it affects everything. It affects everything else. It's just absolutely amazing. So make that effort to take care of your mind and your body. And maybe it's not just doing one, all the things. Maybe it's just focusing on one thing at a time and going, okay, if I can make this a habit, then that is progress. That's fantastic. But the idea is as you progress into more and more greater ability to take care of your mind and your body, your ability to be resilient and to maintain those measures of resiliency will become stronger. Okay, now let's say you've got a hole in your ball, right? And you are right in the moment of trauma or something's going wrong and you just feel like it's starting to crush on you, right? So that will happen because we're human, that's part of life, right? So what do you do in those moments to quickly pump yourself up, right? Well, number one, I think it's really important to not suppress that feeling and or ignore it. So many times, I know in my life I've just kind of swept that under, it's okay, I'll just deal with it later. I'm just not even going to think about that, and really it does a disservice to yourself when you sweep things under the rug and when you don't recognize it and you don't understand what is going on in the moment. So you recognize that you've had a setback, you allow that emotion, just allow it to flow through you rather than to get stuck inside of you. And really look at it as an opportunity to be curious as to why you got triggered, why your resiliency ball flattened just a little bit. Because when we take those moments to learn from what's going on, then we can change things and make so that that doesn't happen again. And so really, if you think about it, it's these moments that help us to be stronger because we can patch the holes that we're not seeing. So don't suppress it, don't ignore it, recognize it and learn from it. Okay. So I have found that when I use my vocal cords, when I'm feeling down, when something has happened and I'm like, oh, that hurt. That's like, okay, how am I going? I start crying, and that's another thing. Don't necessarily suppress the tears because sometimes that is our body's way of moving those emotions out, through those tears and the crying and stuff like that. Like that is not a bad thing. That is normal. That is our body's way of handling emotion. So, but I've also found that, if I'm just down in the dumps, I'm not necessarily crying or anything. If I use my vocal cords in some way, there is power in the use of that organ or, that part of our body. So I found that singing something uplifting or something empowering, like it's not enough just to listen to it, although that does help. But when you can sing along to it and really feel it and get that emotion into it, oh my goodness, that is such a mood lifter and such a power booster. Like singing is just super wonderful. Now, if you're not a singer and you're not comfortable doing that, How about some positive verbal self-talk? And again, it's so much more powerful when we get that through our vocal cords and we say it out loud. Even if you're an introvert, this is a very, very powerful tool and a powerful method that you can use to help yourself to, boost that mood, boost your resiliency, pump your resiliency ball in a very quick way. Also, using your vocal cords is laughing. So I love to laugh. And it reminds me of, okay, you remember on Monsters Inc., where, the whole thing is all about scaring. It's about fear and how they get energy from fear. Yeah, fear does cause an energy, but what causes a greater energy is laughter. And that's what they found at the end of the movie. And I love that ending because it is so true. Laughter and joy is so much more powerful than fear. And so when you're in that moment, sometimes it's really hard. Well, how am I going to laugh about this? Right. But sometimes it's just thinking about what was the last thing you did laugh at? You know, can you find some laughter and in a funny joke? Sometimes I'll turn on I'll find a YouTube video of a comedian, somebody that I know that is going to lift my spirits and make me laugh. And if I can tap into that on a superficial level, even when I'm not feeling it, it actually works to go a little bit deeper. So it allows you to open up a little bit to receive that joy and to receive the air in your resiliency ball. Okay. All right. So number 3, when you're in the moment, is to move your body. Now, I know that I talked about exercise on a regular basis, but sometimes when you're in a moment of not feeling very resilient, maybe you're feeling down or whatever, if you stand and do a power pose, you put your fists on your hips and you spread your legs apart and it's your Wonder Woman power pose. It is absolutely amazing what that can do for you. Let's say you're just feeling nervous, do that power pose. That is a really great way to physically make yourself feel stronger and feel more powerful. You can, even exercising, let's say you are feeling down and you just did 10 jumping jacks, or you just went for a walk and it wasn't to get exercise, but you're moving your body in a way that helps you to realize that you're alive and you are well and you're going to get through it. What happens when we move our body? It gets those natural endorphins produced, and it helps to, and those are your mood boosting hormones. And so that's really, really important for a really quick hack to help you to feel better in the moment. Okay. Also, you can do some mind work, right? You can review the positive and think of all the things that are going right now. Think of all the people in your life that you are grateful that they are a part of your life. Think of all of the things that are, bring you joy, and just start listing them in your brain. Because a lot of times what happens is our brain goes down this rabbit hole of, oh, this thing that happened is so bad. And then we start compounding it and it just starts to snowball until it's so overwhelming that, you become suffocated. And so you can stop that snowballing effect by reviewing all of the good things that are going on in your life. I mean, it could just be as simple as I can breathe or I can see. Think of the very, very simple things, because eventually, as the more you go, the more you're going to see, okay, things could be worse. I'm still here. I'm still successful. I can still move forward. I can still progress, and I can pump my resiliency ball. All right. So those are really, really great things to do to keep that, to pump up your resiliency ball. Okay. One last tip is to journal. If you're really upset, you can write a hot letter. I talked about these in my episode on journals and how to do, different methods of journaling. That's episode 48. So if you want to take a listen at that, I go over all sorts of methods of journaling. So there's hot letters, there's soul letters, there's, all sorts of different things that you can do. So focus on what you can change. And most of the time, what we can change is up here and moving our bodies. So those are a really good things to focus on when you are feeling a little bit flat. Okay, so what happens then when you're feeling totally deflated? When the air is smashed out of you and you don't even know where to go from there. And the hard thing about that is even if you get a little bit of air in you, it takes a long time before you can bounce at all. And so I think that's the key when you're feeling totally deflated is have a little bit of grace with yourself. Know it's going to take you some time. I was teaching a class on forgiveness, and this one guy raised his hand and he said, well, my brother was hit by a drunk driver 5 years ago. And the guy was super angry still. And he was like, do I really have to forgive that drunk driver? He ruined my life. He was going off on how horrible his life was because his brother was hit by a drunk driver and he had all of these emotions. And it was so fascinating to me because I thought, you know what? Forgiveness isn't for the other person. It is for yourself. And there's not a time limit on forgiveness or any repair that you're doing when your ball is flat. There is not a set time. That time frame is yours and yours alone. And you need to realize that it's okay to take that time. Give yourself that space to repair what needs to be repaired, to fill up your resiliency ball with air. It's going to take some time to feel like you can bounce at all. And that's okay. You can't get a bounce with one pump. It's going to take some time to get that air back in your resiliency ball, and that is okay. So when you are feeling deflated, remember to give yourself that space, but also just go back to the basics. Take care of your body. Just focus on the simple things, one good thing at a time, one progress point at a time, just baby steps, right? The very fact that you get up and you try again is resilience. So don't think that you're absolutely deflated because as long as you keep going, you are acting with resilience and you will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more you do it, the more you go a little bit at a time every single day, the more you're going to fill up your resiliency ball. Okay, I've had so many times in my life where I had no bounce at all. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is so important to me because I know what that feels like. And I also know what it feels like when my resiliency ball is full and it just feels so good. So, so good. And I've worked really, really hard to be resilient. But here's the thing. Nobody is 100% resilient 100% of the time. Like nobody. That is just the human condition. We are going to find ourselves in situations multiple times throughout our life, maybe even in one day, where your resiliency is challenged. But just like the more practice you make the more practice you do at building a skill, the easier it becomes. And that is the same principle with resiliency. The more you do to practice, the more you do, even the little bit of actions, that is still progress. So don't compare yourself to other people. Don't, be so hard on yourself because resiliency takes time. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a conscious effort. And so really the best thing to do is just to focus on your own journey and to look at, okay, today, how can I be more resilient? Today, what am I doing to fill my ball with air so that I can bounce back, so that I can experience life in a way that is fun and jubilant and joyful and all of those things that encompass a strong resilient, bouncy ball. So I hope that resonated with you today. I love this concept of bounce as it relates to resiliency because number one, it's just fun. And I really love fun concepts. But also it's so easy to see it, and it's so easy to go, okay, how is my resiliency ball right now? Am I able to bounce? Am I able to feel that joy of a ball that bounces like crazy? So if you have found this to be beneficial, please share it. I am trying to just add more value to the world. And if you know somebody that this could benefit, share it with them. That would be fantastic. And I hope that you can find resiliency in the little things that you do every day too. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your